Welcome to the South Defense.
Today, we are climbing up to about 30,000 feet to look at a decision that is really changing the game in Latin America's defense landscape.
It is. We're talking about Colombia's landmark fighter jet deal. It's for $3.1 billion.
And that's a huge number for them.
It's monumental. I mean, this is so much more than just the largest single fighter jet buy in their history.
Yeah.
It really elevates the Colombian Aerospace Force, the FAC, almost overnight. And, maybe more importantly, it signals a major shift in Bogota's geopolitical thinking.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to give you the shortcut to understanding all of this. We need to unpack the strategy, the economics, the tech.
Right. Why the Swedish Saab Gripen?
Exactly. Why do they go with the Gripen EF and not, say, the American or French options? And what does that tell us about how these big arms deals might work in the future?
And just to set the stage, the contract itself is for 17 of these Gripen fighters.
17.
Yep. 15 are the single-seat Gripen E, and you've got 2 dual-seat Gripen Fs, which are, mostly for training but can be used in operations. Deliveries start in 2026 and should wrap up by 2032.
So that's a pretty clear timeline. Okay, let's get into the why. What was driving this huge investment? For decades, the backbone of their Air Force has been the Israeli Kfir fighter.
That's right, since 1989. The Kfirs have been good workhorses. They've been modernized a few times, upgraded to the C-10 and C-12 standards with better radar and things like that.
Yeah.
But they're just old. They're past their expiration date.
So the problem isn't just their age, it's about actually keeping them flying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're looking at really low availability rates. The sustainment costs are just going through the roof because getting spare parts is a nightmare. And the avionics, even the modernized ones are totally obsolete now.
Right.
Operational readiness was basically falling off a cliff. They had this huge capability gap opening up, and they had to fill it.
And this wasn't a surprise. They've known this was coming for a while. This modernization push started over a decade ago.
Oh, yeah. They looked at the F-16, the Rafale, even the Eurofighter Typhoon.
Yeah, why did it keep stalling?
It was sort of a perfect storm. You had economic slowdowns, then political priorities shifted, and then, of course, COVID hit and just wrecked the budget. No government wanted to be seen spending billions on fighter jets when there were so many other pressing needs at home.
Which means when they finally reopened the tender in 2024, the whole calculus had changed. It wasn't just about buying the fastest, most powerful plane anymore.
Precisely. The Petro administration laid out these 4 key pillars. It was about affordability, sure, but also multi-role flexibility, technology transfer, and this is the big one, industrial cooperation. It shifted from just buying a piece of hardware to buying a whole strategic partnership.
And that new focus really played to the Gripen's strengths, especially considering where it has to operate.
You mean the Andes?
Yeah, let's talk about that. The hot and high environment. Why was that so important?
Well, because so many of Colombia's airfields are at high altitude. The air is thinner, and that just kills the performance of a lot of jets. It reduces engine thrust, it reduces lift.
It makes it harder to take off with a full load of fuel and weapons.
Exactly. But the Gripen is relatively light, and it has a really efficient engine, the GE F414. So it performs exceptionally well in that thin air. It can operate from almost any of those high-altitude strips without a problem.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's look at the competition it was up against. You had the American F-16 Block 70, and the French Dassault Rafale. Very different philosophies there.
Very. The F-16 was, the safe choice. That's the thing. I think Bogota was looking for a little more independence. With U.S. gear, you're always subject to their export controls and, their political whims.
So the Rafale then was the opposite extreme. Total independence.
Total independence and incredible capability. A really high-end jet. But the cost was just prohibitive. The report said its acquisition and operating costs were something like 20 to 30% higher than the Gripen.
And that's because it's a twin-engine fighter, right? That has to be a huge factor in the cost.
It's a massive factor. That's the core economic advantage of the Gripen. It's a single-engine jet. That means less fuel, less complex maintenance, fewer spare parts.
So over the 30-year life of the fleet, the savings are enormous.
They're huge.
Yeah.
Maybe 40 to 50% lower operating costs than the Rafale. Buying the plane is one thing. Being able to afford to actually fly it for 3 decades is the real challenge.
Okay, but this is where it gets really interesting. Because the deciding factor, the real kicker, wasn't just the price tag. It was this incredible offset package that Sweden put on the table.
That was the game changer.
Okay.
That's what Saab and Sweden do so well. They didn't just sell a fighter jet, they offered a national development program. And that lined up perfectly with what the current administration wanted to do domestically.
Let's get specific on that, because we're not just talking about building a few hangars. The offsets included things like public health and water purification. How does a fighter jet company get involved in water purification?
It's a really innovative model. The idea is that Saab is required to reinvest a portion of the contract's value back into Colombia, into key industries that the government chooses. So Saab might partner a Swedish tech firm with a local Colombian company to build, say, sustainable water systems. They fulfill their offset obligation, and Colombia gets a boost to its local engineering and tech sectors.
So this made the whole deal politically sellable. The government can say, look, yes, we bought fighters, but we also secured investment in cybersecurity, in green energy, and things that benefit everybody.
That political palatability is key.
Yeah.
It's a long-term return on investment that goes way, way beyond just military capability.
All right, so we get the strategy. Let's talk about the machine itself. The Gripen EF, it's called a 4.5 generation fighter, but you often hear the term 5th gen capable. What does that actually mean?
So it starts with the power and the design. It's got that GE F414G engine, so you can go faster than Mach 2. But its real strength is its design philosophy. It was built for network warfare, but also for cost efficiency. It has a great combat radius, over 1,300 kilometers, which is critical when you have to patrol 2 coastlines and the Amazon.
And I heard the logistics are just incredibly simple. It's designed to be tough, to not rely on big, perfect air bases.
That is a huge deal for a country with terrain like Colombia's. It has STOL capability, short takeoff and landing. It can operate from highways if it has to.
Wow.
And get this, a ground crew of just 5 people can rearm and refuel it for another mission in less than 20 minutes. That minimal footprint makes it so much more flexible and survivable than its competitors.
That is a massive advantage. Okay, so now for the deep tech. What makes it 5th gen capable? Let's talk about the sensors.
It starts with its radar, the Leonardo Raven ES-05. It's an ESC radar, which is top-of-line stuff.
Yeah.
It has this incredibly wide field of view, so it can track a whole bunch of targets at once, way off to the side.
But the real magic comes from pairing that active radar with a passive sensor, doesn't it?
It does. It has a system called the Skyward G, which is an infrared search and track, or IRST. Basically, it's a heat-seeking sensor. It can spot targets, even stealthy ones, from a long way off just by their heat signature.
And it does that without sending out any signals of its own.
Right, so the Gripen can hunt without revealing its own position, and the plane's computers automatically fuse the data from the radar and the IRST, giving the pilot this single clear picture of everything that's going on. That's network-centric warfare.
Okay, what about firepower? What kind of weapons make this deal so impactful?
2 systems in particular really change things for Colombia. First, the MBDA Meteor missile. It's a beyond visual range air-to-air missile, one of the best in the world. It has a range of over 200 kilometers.
Which gives them a huge advantage in the air.
A decisive advantage. And second, and this is maybe even more strategic, are the RBS-15 anti-ship cruise missiles.
The RBS-15? That gives them a serious maritime strike capability, right? Way out into the Caribbean and the Pacific.
Absolutely. Yeah. Suddenly they can counter illegal trafficking, protect their offshore oil rigs, and just project power over their waters in a way they never could before. It turns the FAC into a force with a credible naval attack capability.
So this is so much bigger than just an upgrade. This is a full-on geopolitical pivot.
It really is a strategic realignment.
Yeah.
By choosing Sweden, Colombia is consciously reducing its heavy reliance on U.S. and Israeli suppliers.
Yeah.
And given the recent diplomatic tensions, especially the break with Israel in 2024, that sends a very clear message.
And regionally, this has to change the balance of power. You mentioned network-centric warfare. This must boost their credibility against their neighbors.
Most obviously against Venezuela. For a long time, Venezuela's Russian-made Su-30s have completely outclassed the old Kfirs. There was a real imbalance. The Gripen EF effectively counters those jets. It restores a measure of deterrent.
And what about that industrial dividend you mentioned? The long-term effects of that offset package?
Well, the hope is that it injects all this aerospace know-how into Colombia's own industry. There's talk of co-developing a local MRO, hub maintenance, repair, and overhaul.
So Colombia could become a regional service center for the Gripen.
Exactly. Imagine if neighbors like Peru or Ecuador also buy the Gripen. Suddenly, Colombia is this key player in a regional support network. It's a tool for defense diplomacy.
And for Saab, this is a huge win. Colombia plus Brazil. That really solidifies the Gripen in a part of the world that isn't, a traditional NATO market.
It proves their model works. Top-tier tech, industrial cooperation, and affordability. By the time this full squadron is ready in 2030, Colombia will have re-anchored its strategic position for the next 30 years, balancing real performance with national autonomy.
So, when we put it all together, what does it all mean? It seems like this is a true watershed moment. It's an air combat upgrade, yes, but it's also a strategic pivot, all wrapped up in this massive domestic investment plan.
It's a completely new way of looking at a defense deal. Yes, they bought a fighter jet. But it was the package, the parts that covered public health, sustainable energy, water purification, things that align with sustainable development goals. That made it all work. It made it fiscally smart and politically brilliant.
Which leaves us with a really provocative final thought, doesn't it? If this model works so well in Colombia, is this what we're going to see more of? Will coupling massive defense sales with these crucial sustainable development goals, could that become the new template for how countries modernize their militaries all around the world?
Don't forget to hit subscribe if you want to stay ahead of the biggest shifts in aerospace, geopolitics, and defense innovation.